Kia ora koutou to anyone who's listening. So this is Kirsten, Lunde, and I, and Rich Durham, and we're going to be making a quick recording to talk about a couple of the playtesting platforms you might want to use if you're virtually playtesting, and why you might want to choose one or the other. I'll let Kirsten introduce herself, and then I'll have a word, and then we'll talk about a couple of platforms.
Super. Yeah, I am Kirsten Lunde, as Rich said, and I'm from the States, as you can probably hear. I'm from the US originally. I grew up in California, spent a little bit of time in Colorado before coming to beautiful New Zealand with my husband, who was born here, and our two children. My oldest is still in Virginia in the States, but the four of us are here in New Plymouth and love it. Before I left the States, I was homeschooling my son and was really into game schooling and learning through gaming. And we were going to go to the symphony in Denver, and there was nothing I could find in a classical music game. So I decided there should be, and that led me on this path to becoming, I'm a very new designer. But of course, if you're watching this, you probably know it, the bug bites you, and then you create a whole bunch of other games as well. So Ovation is my classical music game I'm working on, and then I have a few others in the works. And as I talk about the platform screentop.gg, I'll probably be showing you some of the other ones that I'm working on. But yeah, very new to it. Love the GANZ community. Participated in the retreat in 2020 when life was a little less less COVID impacted. Had a fantastic time meeting the wonderful designers here, and love participating in the group. So I'm hopeful that I can provide any useful information for anyone interested in digital playtesting, because I've just learned a lot, as you do when you need to. So I want to share what information I have to make it easier for you if you want to try.
Thank you. Thanks, Kirsten. And just for those who don't know me, my name is Rich Durham. I'm also originally from the United States, but I moved here about 10 years ago, and definitely have made it my home. I live up in Tamaki-Makaurau, and I've been working I've been making games since I was a small child, like I'm sure many of the people in the game artisans of New Zealand have, and I've been doing it seriously for about 15 years. And my game credits don't generally end up on Board Game Geek, though, because a lot of the games that I make are for live events or for internal use in organizations, for festivals, that kind of a thing. There's a few print and play games that I've made just for giggles, but I've never really had grand aspirations for running a publishing company of the style that you may be familiar with. So I'm coming to this as well with the idea that I've produced games for clients which were primarily delivered using some online board game tools. They didn't even want a physical version. They just wanted to play it online, to put it another way. So I hope to share some of that experience as well. And also some of the reasons why I chose the tool that I did to help contextualize for anyone else out there why you might choose a tool which has disadvantages, clearly, but those disadvantages may actually fit the need that you've got. Like any good card effect, it's contingent on situation. So without any further ado, Kirsten, I'm going to hand it back over to you to talk about a tool of choice.
Super. So the tool that I've chosen to go with currently is screentop.gg. That is the name of it, and it is also the website. So you just go to screentop.gg as your URL, and you will find it easily.
Great. You can screen share if you like. I've got
let me
set up for you.
Go ahead and do that. Work. Tell me if it works.
You're good.
Fantastic. Okay. So this happens to be mine. I'll go right to the main page. So screentop.gg, this is the main page that you would see there, and you can see there's lots of games. Jamie, who designed Fight Sequence here, is one of the people who helped me get into it, and Ryan, who did Fairy Ring, encouraged me to get into it years ago. So I see Games of Friends right here on the first page. But it's a great tool. People, if you have your game public, you can see that those are all set public. If you have your game public and people can play it and understand the rules, they can go right here and play at any time. I am using it more for play testing. So you do not have to make it public and accessible like that. You can have it remain private, as my games have been, or public where they can see it on your page. As I've got some of these are public and they can be seen on my page, but they're not playable by the public. So you have an in-between as well, where you can show people at least, hey, this is a page that I'm working on. Let me know if you're interested and I can teach you one of these games. Because currently mine are not set up where you will know how to play once you get in there. There are ways that you can absolutely do that. And I haven't gotten to that point yet. So what are some of the reasons I chose screentop that might be useful for others as well? Really, I moved off of Tabletop Simulator primarily for accessibility. Tabletop Simulator does have a license barrier to entry, which so does Tabletop Playground. So I was really exploring Tabletopia and screentop.gg, because with screentop.gg, all you need to do is share a URL to your game, to a room of your game. As soon as you hit play, it creates a room, and I can do that here and show you. I'll show you that with Ovation. I'll hit play, and Ovation will pop up. And there's Ovation. And all you got to do is copy that URL at the top and send that to your players, and they can join you. And so that's really easy, web-based, doesn't need a license. I don't have to ask people to acquire the license if they don't already have it. So that was a major asset to me. I felt uncomfortable asking people to.
Kirsten,
yeah.
just a second. Should we show kind of people what it looks like while playing the game as well? Right now, would that be a good thing to hit the join button? And
sure. Yeah. Oops. I don't know what I did there with my URL. Yeah, if I hit join, you can customize your seats here. So I have customized the seats to be named after the composer you would choose to play. I'll choose Mozart because he's kind of central screen here. If I choose Mozart, there he is, and you notice the hand turned to the same color. That's the hand right there. That's the same color as Mozart's player board. So if I ever get tickets, they'd go right into my hand. But notice I can't see the other players. So it functions much like other programs where you can set viewing options for which parts other players can see and which parts they can't. There is a capability of seeing everything. I've created the role called Kapellmeister here. And this way I have the game master seat. I can see everything, watch everything, which is great when you're play testing. So you have to create that, but it takes an extra 2 minutes maybe to go ahead and create that. And then I can go back and sit down as Mozart. I can throw out some cards. Anchor points are very easy to set so that they'll be face up or face down. Oh, you can even set those, which I need to do to limit to one card so you can't accidentally stack up.
Are you dragging all of those? Or that first one was so quick it looked like it was automatically sending them to the anchor point?
No, I'm dragging them, I'm afraid, but it's pretty easy. Takes me less time doing it in this than it did when this was in Tabletop Simulator. If there is a way to script that to populate the player board, I don't know how to do that.
Now those are quite small, but I see how you could zoom in and out a little bit.
You can zoom in with your screen and you can highlight. You can point your mouse pointer and hit the space bar. And see things largely. But this is another one of the features I like. This play area is called a container in the way the program works. Let me throw a couple of these cards. We'll throw another one here. Sure, why not? If I have my mouse pointer in the play area, I can do the space bar and it will zoom the entire play area, which is kind of handy, which is very handy. Or I can certainly zoom in. But it's kind of nice to just hit the space bar and be able to see my entire play area there. So yeah, I'm on a touchpad. So I'm just using the touchpad to zoom. I think there was scroll, like control and scroll, or some kind of click control that works for. I don't have a scrolling mouse, but they were doing that when we were playtesting in the New Zealand Discord playtesting group on Tuesday night. And so there's lots of ways you can get it bigger. You can different keyboard shortcuts than other platforms, but once you learn them,
now I see this is
pretty
primarily
friendly.
Obviously Ovation is a card game. Have you used in one of your prototypes dice and other randomizers and spinners?
I have dice, and let's see, will it give you the same screen? I can just go out of here. I have dice. This is 2-dimensional. That is something that can be an asset, or it can be a hindrance, depending on what your needs are. So for me, it was an asset for Ovation. Dice, these are dice. these are flat little dice. These are rock, paper, scissors dice right here. I have to sit down to interact. Let's see. No, that just rotates. Shuffle? No. How do I? Oh, there we go. There we go. So that's the experience of rolling dice.
There you go.
I can see that doesn't feel as satisfying as the 3D dice rolling around, for sure.
No, no, that's okay, because it's a 2D experience, and it's really got a really great card experience and a board experience as a result of that. You don't have to worry about things getting knocked over, and token placement's great. If I was making a game, why would I choose this kind of format that is very, very flat? Why would I choose this over something else?
For me, for Ovation, it was critical. The slipping cards underneath the player board in a 3D physics world was creating it was imbalancing the player board, and anytime you move the tokens to track your inspiration, it sometimes it would knock things around because it was sliding. You know, it was uneven now because I stacked cards over on the left side. Now my board's like this in the 3D physical world, which doesn't happen in real life, but in the physics of Tabletop Simulator, it was happening. So this, I have none of that problem at all. This doesn't care about the thickness of your cards and stacking them under a board or anything like that.
Yeah. What does the back end look like in terms of the scripting that you might need to do, or setting things up, just for in terms of accessibility for people who are trying to pick up the system?
There is very little. There's very little scripting that you need to know how to do. This is the back end. So there's these 5 different elements of your game. I think of them as very, I think I mentioned to you, Rich, not on our recording yet, but for me, it was very linear, and it worked the way my brain works. Years ago in work, I used to design databases in Microsoft Access 97. I'm dating myself, but that's okay. Way back then. So my brain works in that linear way of table to field to, relationships, and it's all these little linear connections to get what you want at the end. And this very much works that way. So you have at the bottom here, you have, the reason it's structured this way is you'll put them in top to bottom, but I like to talk about it bottom to top to kind of conceptualize it. So surfaces is your table. First thing you need is a table to play your game at. Next thing is, well, we got to sit down, we need seats. Then you got to hand them a rule book. So that's your guides. Okay, now we're sitting at the table, we've got our rule book, we need all the components. And the unique thing about this to remember is the components includes anything that your player needs that's not the table, the seat, or the rule book. So if you need a hand, that's a component. If you need some kind of structured playing area, that's a component. If you want people to put things on a grid, that's a component. So components are a little bit more than you think of when you say components to put in your box. Because a player hand would never be in the box, but it's something you need to create here. And then what do those components look like? That's where you need your assets. So you just simply add assets. That's my card back in this game. You can use, just like in Tabletop Simulator, I don't know if you do this in Tabletopia, but just like in Tabletop Simulator, I still use the TTS deck builder to create these images, where I drop in images into the grid and I save these. So you're just putting, it's just like you do in Tabletop Simulator, you load your image assets. in there. And then once you have your assets, then you start creating the components. Cards are all tiles, containers, or anything that you want to hold something else on. So the deck is a tile, is a set of tiles. And then when you define those tiles, you say, well, how many variants are there? So if you had a 54 card deck, your deck would be 54 cards and it would have 54 variants because each one is unique. This is the only place where you're going to want to use coding. I don't know if this is going to work. Oh, I didn't pull it up. There is, I'll just show you. When you create a variant and you put that first card in, that first card, and then you set it to the right asset, and you're going to set it to that spread of images, right? And you say the index for this image is number 1, so that's the very first card in that spread of images. Mm-hmm. So then you need to create the additional variant. So what you do is you clone it as many times as you need. And then you put in this is the only time you're going to code is in here. I'm not going to save it, but it's asset index. I can't remember exactly. It's something I just copy paste from their tutorial. No, that's not. It's a really simple line, but I always just copy paste and throw it in there.
Yeah, they have it in that.
Scary.
Yeah, they have it in that learn tab, don't they? When you
Yep.
go play, create, or learn, they have a couple of JavaScript
Yep.
things you can cut and paste.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And this one I use all the time. It scared me when I first saw this. Not gonna lie, I saw this and I went, coding. And it's been a breeze, even for a layperson like me that does not do I don't do any of this kind of programming language stuff at all. So I just copy this whole unit from function all the way through this close bracket and then paste over it with what's on their website. And that is the entirety of the coding that I do.
Now, what did that coding do with bulk updating?
What it'll do is it'll right here, you see asset index here. I can show you. Well, let's see, I can probably grab it real quick. Are you seeing?
Yeah.
Which me search?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so learn beginner tutorial. There it is, right there. I was close. Asset index colon index comma. There we go. So, you know what I'm going to do? Forgive me. I'm going to go ahead and clone so I don't mess anything up. So I'm going to clone. I just cloned this.
Yes.
So I have an entire copy of it right here. And as you can see, I made one that is for pitching, which that's one of the features I would like to talk to you is why it's handy for pitching. Yeah. So I just cloned that. So now I have a complete copy of the game. So let's say I wanted to, let's go in here. Hit it again. Just because I don't want to goober anything. Oops, not asset. We're going to component. We'll create a component. And we're going to create a tile. Like I said, everything's a tile unless it's a die or something you want to put something into or onto. So here's my tile 1. I want to make a card 1. Save. We'll give it a variant, and we'll set it to that gold. And notice that asset index is still 1 here. So we're going to say golden 1. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's the card it is. Oh, I didn't set the, sorry about that. I didn't set the measurements correctly. This is something you just have to get used to.
Now that'll be familiar to people who use Tabletop Simulator though, right? Because that's similar card sheet format.
Yeah, with the image, yes. Mm-hmm. Setting the dimensions is less familiar, so I don't think that's what I normally set it at. But this is you just set your dimensions for the card shape, and until it works with the images you're using. All right, so then I have my variant. I have that 1. So now all I've got is this 0 card. So I can clone. I think there's 16, so I'm going to clone 15 of them. And now if I go to golden 2, it looks the same. it would change on the screen here in the center if it had the right index number. What I do is I click here to edit. I'm going to go copy that text, paste it over here. Oopsie, what just happened? That was weird. I did something with my touchpad. Apologize. All right, so then if we look over here, actually, if you look over on the right, you can see the asset index is 1, asset index is 1. Scroll down, they're all going to be tied to index number 1. So if I paste this over here, notice then asset index 1 for the first card, asset index 2 for the next card, index 3 for the next card. So that's just saying, hey, each subsequent one, add 1 to the index. Somehow it's doing that. I don't know exactly how it's saying that, but now you notice if I click on these, I'll go to number 5. Oh, look, my card is updated. So that is the extent of the coding scary part. That was it. It's just clone, select them all to edit, put in that code, that paste in that text, or you can write asset index : space index comma, and it'll fix all of your cards to be the next subsequent index number, which gets you the right images. That was the part that scared me the most, and it's really not bad. I do it just autopilot at this point. It's pretty easy to do.
Right. So talk about like how and why you would show this, and like, or rather how you can use it for the demoing.
Oh yeah. So I'll go back to I did what you just saw me do real quickly in cloning. I cloned this game here, and I named it Apple Orchard Pitch, so that I know this is my pitch one, and this one's private, so I would only show it if I want to. I hit play. What I set up in the background, so this is how the game opens if you want to play the game. So it's a good start for pitching, and I could modify this, and it will just, if I modify this in editing, I could make this initial screen however I want it to look. But oftentimes in a pitch, you're going to want to talk about late game or get an image of late game state, or you might have several game states you might want to feature, and that's where you can have multiple surfaces. That was the one at the very bottom that I said, consider this is your table. Well, you can have as if you had multiple tables set up, and you can go, now come look at this part of the game, now come look at this part of the game. So I have down here in the left corner, you say surface 1. I click on that. Surface 2 is a late game state.
Beautiful.
Or I can just say, and here's what it looks like later in the game when players have selected their cards and built in their orchard, yada, yada, yada. And you can do that multiple times. You can have a variety of different game states.
And you can rename those surfaces, I imagine. Those are just what you use as default. And
yeah,
other people might use this as actual game mechanic too, like, because there's limited screen real estate, right? So you'd want to like maybe make a scoring area on a different surface. Yeah,
you absolutely could do that. Yeah,
cool.
Yep. I had Jamie, who I mentioned, whose game was Fight Sequence in there. Jamie has a first surface where you select which deck you're going to play and which character, and it takes you to the next surface with your character set up, which is really cool. I have no idea how Jamie did all that magic. I don't have to do anything that cool yet, but yeah, there are some really neat ways you can use the surface functionality. Yeah, so the other advantages of it that made me go this direction were that the 3D thing was actually an advantage to me, so that was a reason not to choose Tabletop Playground for me. That and the license cost consideration. This is unlimited. You do not, as you noticed, I just cloned a game again and just popped it on there, and there's nothing stopping me at this stage. It could change later. They have said that it could change later, that there could be tiers and could be a subscription required, like with Tabletopia. But at this time, it is free to be at the professional level and have as many games set up as you would like. So that was appealing as well, and that I could migrate all 4 of my games. I could get all 4 of my games in here that I'm currently digitally playtesting, and that wouldn't require me to have a subscription or do a workaround for that in any way. The other thing that's really cool for when you're pitching or sharing your game is the fact that you can give people roles. And it's also great for if you're partnering or if you're working with somebody. So if you're Badgers from Mars and there are 3 of you working on the game, you can all have the role of designer, right? So that would be game specific. I can look at Ovation. I won't show you one of the screens because I don't know if those folks are okay with it, but you can go to the settings of the game and there's access. So this is where I made it public, but not allowing just anyone to play. You can set this so that people can play. You can set it so people can clone. I don't know why you do that, but you can also create members. If you see here on the permissions, it says myself and anyone labeled designer and anyone labeled tester and anyone labeled player can play the game. Mm-hmm. Me and the designer can edit it. So you can create those roles in 2 different ways. There's members. This is my friend Mike who helped me with Ovation. He's awesome. So I put everything in and I needed help to make it pretty, and I gave him the designer role and access, and he did a lot of the refined editing of it. And I've learned a lot just by looking at what he did. So that's been great. The players, I don't want to click on that here. There are some people in there, I don't know if they're comfortable with their names, but that is similar. You just create a key and send that link to somebody, and then they log into screentop and they can just play a new setup of your game any old time. When you invite someone to a room, that room is complete. So once the game is done, it's still in that game state, the ending game state. It doesn't reset, and there's not a quick reset button. So you have to play each time to get a new.
And I don't need to add people to this players list with keys if I want them just to play a game with me, right? I can just
correct.
Open a room and then send them the link.
Exactly. This has been handy for example, I have a game with that a publisher's looking at, and they wanted to be able to play it with their partners, their team. And so I just sent them a key so that they can open up a new room and play it with anybody on their team at any time they want.
Right. One thing that I'd like to see, and I don't know if you have this instituted, is the guides and how that is incorporated into the actual play experience.
I can show you where the guide lives. We could probably go into Jamie's game because I think Jamie's got it. Let's see. All right, let's just back.
The reason I ask is because if I've got somebody looking at a game and they want the rules, they want to learn how to play it, I've got a few options, and I know that some of the other platforms and how you access the rule book, sometimes it's a separate PDF, sometimes it's a separate tab or a window, or you have to download it ahead of time, or you just got to know the rules. But screentop deals with it a bit differently, as does Tabletopia. So I want to highlight that for those people who are like, oh, well, it's a bit daunting sometimes to just drop into a table and see it all set up and ready to go and have no idea what is going on.
Right, no idea what's going on. Yeah, so on the right-hand side of the player's experience, this help drop down with the question mark. It automatically has, I've added this, let me delete it. It automatically has this controls and shortcuts information here for the players, which is handy because there are some differences. There's a lot that's similar to Tabletop Simulator for anybody that's used that with shortcut keys and stuff. But there's a couple of differences. I usually warn people that Q&E do not rotate just your highlighted item. It rotates your entire screen. So I'll be like, so you don't want to use those. And then at some point in the game, I will hear them go, whoa, oh, you told me about this. It's okay. Because it just takes the whole thing and turns it. But a lot of them are similar. Just remembering what, R is not roll or shuffle, it's Z and stuff like that. So this is the simple stuff right there. If you want to add into guides, just like other parts of screentop.gg, you just create, and then you have your tools here. So it even tells you guides can be formatted with Markdown. Here's the guide on Markdown syntax, and will appear in the help game or help panel, which is used by clicking the question mark button. So you're able to put in here whatever you like, and there's a little bit of guidance for how to structure it. But that's where you would put, and you can put it in several sections. So you can have a section on, like for Ovation, I could have a section on Inspiration, a section on Seeking Fortune, you know, different parts of the game or different elements. You can have it grouped so it's they can quick search it if they're in game and go, what was that part about during performance? Where is that? And they can go find
having a quick poke around. If you when you click on a game in the playable list of games, the public games, it takes you to an information page, and people I see have just linked to a PDF version of the rules they have, or doing things like that, which is making a surface, which is essentially some instructional rules.
Yep.
Which is
that's Jamie's
incredibly helpful.
Jamie's splash screen, and then Jamie has utilized these the guide tools as well. Here we go. If you'd rather read the Google Doc version of the full rule book, click this link.
Great. So multiple ways. And I really appreciate the using the surfaces as a way of welcoming players into the experience and kind of showing them what they need to do and then moving to another surface. That's a fantastic onboarding for the platform.
Absolutely. And Jamie has used it really well here. That's definitely not a place I have achieved because I'm just doing it for playtesting in the background. But getting when I would like it to be publicly accessible, this is absolutely, to me, the way to go.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to show about screentop?
Let's see. I talked about roles. I talked about surfaces. I talked about sort of the game master role, so you can see everything when you're playtesting, and you want to see everybody's stuff. I really liked, this is minor compared to the other things, but I really liked that the anchor points were so easy to get to kind of limit them. I can limit, with anchor points, you can limit what interacts with them. Let's see what has more components. I guess Ovation has the most components. We'll go back to Ovation. If I can find it. Because I didn't do all the guts of this one. But the I guess the best way to describe it is if I click on I have to join. If I click on the meeple, for instance, it's only looking at the anchor points that the meeple's allowed to go to. If I click on one of these, it's only looking at the spot that's allowed to go to. So the anchor points you can set to components, and you can set those components for how they should appear. So for example, that is set for face up. The deck is set for face down. And that I didn't know how to do in Tabletop Simulator when I was in there. I know it's possible, and I think it's scripting related. But here, it's just when I'm setting it up, there's little drop downs that, where would I find that easiest? There's little drop downs that say, do you want it front or back? And it's really, and then on the drop point, you say which components it works with. Trying to figure out where the best place for all those. That's the hand. You don't want the hand. Player zone. No, it's not really player zone. Player boards. Objects. Oh yeah, there's my drop zones. Drop zones. And now you can see there's the anchors. So all these anchors are just tied to that. See, you can auto flip, auto rotate. You can set a capacity so that you can't accidentally stack a bunch of things in a spot. You can say, nope, only one thing goes there. So there's all these little options that you have. Another interesting capability, even though it's an extra step to create hands in this, as opposed to just having hands be automatic, is that flexibility of being able to set who can look at it and stuff like that. I have a friend whose game Heck and Hounds she couldn't run Heck and Hounds in Tabletop Simulator because one role needed to see everybody's hands each round, and there was just no way to set that hand to be not visible, to set the hands to not be visible to two players but be visible to the third player, for example. there just wasn't that capability and functionality. But in this you can set your hands with some very specific, where is, nope, not there, must be on objects. Objects, there we go. So on Martinez, the only people who can see Martinez's hand are Mariana and the God seat. And you can change your view policies, deny certain seats, deny all the seats. There's a little bit more flexibility, even though it's not automatic and you have to create it. It does give you a little flexibility there.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I've really liked it. And then you can set your drop zone so that the cards just come in and line up all neatly and everything. So it's great. Yep, I think that's it. Did we want to talk about the things that maybe it wouldn't fit for you?
Absolutely, yeah, please do.
It definitely would not be fit for you if you're looking for that 3D experience. It is definitely 2D, as we were talking about. So not the best fit if you're needing that 3D experience. If you're doing a roll and write and you need writing, actually need writing for it, you can't do it with tokens instead, or any placeholder kind of component instead. You really need that writing tool. There is no writing tool here. At the time I was looking, there was no writing tool in any of the alternatives to TTS. That was the only place you can get it. But since then, Tabletop Playground has added a write feature. So the only two that have that are the 2 3D experiences. So that would be another reason that it wouldn't fit for a game you're working on. It is something people aren't as familiar with. So people who are used to doing Tabletop Simulator will have that QE, they might rotate their whole world view for a second. So it might have that little bit of a learning curve, but it hasn't been too bad. It's just something that you can consider, or people might be nervous about trying something new. And then the one thing about containers that is disappointing that impacts my game with the animals is that I would love to be able to set these cards as a container so that when you put, oh, sorry, I have to join as a seat. I'm forgetting that I got to join as a seat. So if I made this a container and I put a token on it, then I could pick this up and both of them would come together. The problem is containers don't have enough option for a back asset currently. So you can only have a one-sided component with an image on one side. If you want something to, or not component, but container, something that you want other things to set on top of and move together or that sort of thing. If you want it to have images on both sides, you're kind of stuck. So that's the only thing that's disappointing about is when people want to shift these around, they have to shift these separately. It's not a huge deterrent for this game, but that definitely could be of concern.
Well, as a kind of follow on from that, I imagine then you're not allowed to multi-select items.
You can. That is, it's very nice in some ways and not so nice in others. In this game, people are building out on a grid. If I multi-select because I want to move, I can have one selected, I can hit Control A, and it will only select the same type of component in that container, which is great. It's not going to grab all of that component. So you notice these are not grabbed, which is great. But now if I try to move it, these are going to group together, which is exactly what I don't want to do. This just occurred recently, so I don't know if there's a fix for that. I haven't messaged in the Discord. That is an advantage to this game that I have found is the Discord is active, the developer is active, and the answers come quickly. I have only used it once, but I've seen a lot in there. But I did ask a question in there and it was answered. I felt pretty promptly. It was within a couple hours that I got an answer. I mean, it was not urgent at the time. And so, which is more than I can say for what I encountered with some of my questions in Tabletop Simulator. But I found it to be very useful and they are responsive. They are interested in hearing. I don't know if anybody's talked to them about whether or not there could be a back asset for containers or not. I think that would be something that I would like to suggest that they consider, because that would help. And then this, maybe there's a way to resolve it. I haven't learned that yet. And if there isn't, I would like to suggest it because it would be nice to be able to move these and not have that happen. And the reason those are splitting into two is because I have limited these points to items so that you can't accidentally stack cards on top of the other card. Oh, that's why it's splitting that when it goes back down. So yeah, you can multi-select. It can be really handy, particularly if you're wanting to just discard a bunch of cards. They just go bloop, they discard together, which is great. Conversely, if you grab a couple, you can multi-select by holding shift and clicking your mouse. So I can select 5 of them. If you do that and put it into a hand that has your anchor points set, so you're an anchor line really, but if you have that set, it'll just spread the cards out nicely in your hand automatically, which is nice. So so yeah, there's some of those kind of things that are just built in that are really handy, but occasionally you'll have a, oh no, they just grouped together moment.
Yeah. Well, it is a developing platform, as you know, as you said, and there probably will be professional level tiers in the future, but after those kind of things are coming along. So it's good that they're quite responsive since they're developing it right now. It's not going to be
part of
a forgotten platform.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason they're looking at charging is they also are aware that some designers, developers, or some people want to have the functionality of monetizing and being able to charge for access. So I think that's part of why they're considering, that's part of their consideration for long term. So that's part of why they're looking at the whole professional level.
Speaking of monetization, that'd be a decent segue into the platform that I'm going to talk about a little bit, which is Tabletopia.
Perfect.
Right. Not that we're doing this for monetization, but that here's a platform that was built around it. So I'm gonna share a little bit about Tabletopia because I've been building a number of things in it recently. I'm gonna share one that I am allowed to share that I made for presentation at the Connections Wargaming Conference. So Tabletopia, it was a platform that was crowdfunded actually a few years ago, and it is made around players and for players to be able to find games to play and play them for free, which means that, or I should say, just be able to play them for free. And if they have a premium account, they are getting access to other games. So you as a developer can make a game and then allow access to it under a monetization program. As a designer, what this means is that they do have a paid tier account level where you are allowed one game under a free account. You sign up by email, so you can have one per email account. You can have one game, which then can have a couple of setups, which are generally how you describe, like, oh, this is a game set up for 2 players or set up for 4 players. But it doesn't need to be that division if your game sets up the same way regardless, or if you want to just have the table laid out like that. And something that's nice about it for the play experience is that when you come to a game and you can share the link, and it can be in an embedded clickable thing that you can just kind of have click a link and it opens up in the browser window to launch on the Tabletopia, is it'll then go to your kind of classic lobby, and you can then send the link to this link here, and it'll pop in, and they can just make a quick account and then join in to the game, and you can start it when you wish. So I'm going to show you what this game looks like in play. And yes, you can close rooms and you can restart rooms, so you can kind of reset it back to the initial setup and things like that. One of the benefits that I found of this platform is that it runs in a browser window, and it is the 3D experience. So recently I used this for a client. Oh, and the background that I'm coming at from this is that I've been using these different platforms, as I said, for digital delivery of a game. So not this one, which was just for the conference, but I have made games that were made for this platform, and we wanted the option in the future to be able to make a printed version, and we wanted them to be able to access it without having to download Steam or any other platforms. And since this worked in the browser, gave them the full kind of physical game experience, it was the ideal platform for that. And another reason on the development side in here, as you'll see, it's pretty easy to go from printed assets and files you have set up for print into Tabletopia. So that was another benefit, at least in the development side. So this is a game. I'm gonna kick these users. This is from a previous game. They just never logged out. Goodbye. Right, as you can see, they're just hanging in there. In case there's disconnects, they can come back right into the game. That's really what that's about. So in this game, it is, you know, your kind of classic everything is in 3D kind of a game where your interactions are going to be really familiar, right? To something like, I'm going to take a seat. There we go. So this game is paused. I don't actually if I'm going to know if I'm able to play it right now because it's paused by a different account. Who owns the game, since we were sharing a test of it. Restart. Let's see if that works. So as I said, you can restart a game anytime you want. I should have prepared this turkey earlier. There we go. So yeah, so what I can do is I can, you know, you roll your dice and it looks cool. Really helpful if you're going to be demoing something that's got a lot of table presence, because again, you can have that 3D thing, or you can show your cool bits. And it's just something a little satisfying about rolling the dice in this platform and moving things around. And of course, you can, flip them a bit and, do all the things you'd be able to do in a 3D environment. You'll notice that some things don't stack. There we go. Ooh, they do stack, and it doesn't wibble wobble when I do that. I can do other things like laying other stuff on top of stuff and moving them, and they will move as a group. I don't necessarily always want to do that, right? But I can, right? So that is something, if you are looking for that kind of a feature, it is there. Something else you can do is you can have boards which or tiles, I should say, that link up to each other so that they kind of snap to the sides, the edges. There's no gridding or anything that I can do in this. No snap points on the table surface itself, but you can make, and I'll show you how in a minute, how you can make any asset like these boards or tiles and things have locations that you can drop things onto, or that they snap to. So you can have things that snap onto a location on it. So for instance, I've got this here. These things at one point I had set them up so that it will snap to this, and it's a bit bigger than the actual area, but just to make it a little bit easier, you can see it. Maybe there it goes. It snapped to the score. Same thing with this deck. Snap like that. So those are snap areas for those decks. Same with that one. Discard pile, right, for that. So what I want to be able to do with a platform like this when I'm making it is say, well, how quickly can I go from print to this digital version? So let me exit out of this. Back to the lobby. Actually, just to make sure that doesn't happen again, close the room so that we can't just jump back into this one mid-game, which you can do. So the difference there is between the playground and the workshop. So since I can create this game, since I have right now I'm logged into the account that made it, and every game gets its little page. This is what people would see if this game was public. And so it acts like a nice place if you were trying to market your game or right. So you can share, if you do have it public, you can share this link to the game page and people can take a look at it. You notice it says it's not available for players because this one is published, but it is private, hence the little lock icon. This is where you could add links to things like rule books, which are just going to pop up in a new tabs. I should have shown that before, because you can access them when you're in the game as well. Crumbs. Should have done that earlier. Right. So as I said, you have setups for different games, and then with setups, and this is where this platform did give me a bit of trouble at first with how it kind of the language that it uses for different things. But now what I understand, of course, our play zones are essentially the link you're going to share to people, right? You can control access to the game through the play zones. And so I have one that is set up that I can share, and it's just this link here. I can also make the embed thing, and I can, so that either Tabletopia users or everybody, not a lot of granularity in how I'm sharing that. But I should be able to. Kirsten, do you see the other tab that just opened, or is it just the one tab?
I'm seeing the
kind of lobby.
Yeah.
Yep, cool.
Yep.
So I'm just going to start this one game again. Um, it loads pretty fast once you get assets down. We found that there is a bit of a lag for people loading it the first time because it's got to download all of those digital assets, but nothing too onerous. It's worked. Fortunately, it worked through firewalls and things because it's just a web browser tab, even with a private window. So what I want to show is in game, I can click a little link down here and it'll bring up the PDF. Whoops, I scrolled through very fast. It'll bring up the PDF of the rules so that you can kind of check it out. Not searchable, not anything other than just a PDF. So not as useful, not as flexible as the guides from screentop, for instance, but there's a lot of fidelity to the printed version. Okay. In terms of the platform itself for playing, you can change, which I can't in this game. I turned this mode off. You can change how turns work. So that it's open access, anybody can touch anything, or you can make it so it's turn-based so that only I can touch the pieces when it's my turn. I do have some control over how that works too, in terms of making it so that I can choose who goes next, or I can make it so that it just goes around the table like this. That's not really the most salient point, I think, for us right now. So let me take a look at the show you the kind of how the setup works. So to create a setup, this is where you're going to actually do all of your crafting along with objects. So you may have a game, but a game in Tabletopia is just a collection of objects. So if you want to make a game, start with the objects, because that's how you're going to assemble it basically into the different setups. So this game is just a collection of those objects, and it makes that container when you make a game, and then you can just put objects into it. And it's a convenient analogy if you want to think about it. This is the box, and here's all the objects that are in the box. So again, it works well with that physical kind of translation. So when I'm creating an object, the list is this, and now these objects, you may say, well, why card versus a card deck? Well, you can actually make a bunch of cards, and then it will auto convert that into a deck. But what I would be doing then is saying, well, what container do I want to put that in? So you can see this little folder here, and I've grouped things up where I've got it. Every deck is essentially a different container. I could make another container, or a group as they call it here, where every group, I could have all of my decks in that group. This is just a folder structure. So like on your desktop computer, you can think of it like that. So these are not necessarily every component that I need to have. I could have made a group that says, let me put all my tokens in that group. Right? But when I'm uploading things, and this I think might be where it's the most useful to go from physical asset to this, is I don't have to do any gridding in this game. I don't have to lay them out in a sheet and use a third tool for that. I just have the individual cards like this. And what I can do, I can edit them afterwards. So the editing I can't do on the fly during a game, but what I can do is I can actually, you kind of can, but I don't recommend it. It may break things in the play that you're doing. But I can go into an asset and I can say, I really want to edit this particular card, fix a typo or whatever. And I can delete that front image and then just upload a new one by dragging it into the window and drag it right there onto this spot. I don't want to delete that though, but let me show you a new one. But also magnetic maps. Now you notice navigation here is not cool. I can just save or cancel. I can't just go to the next card. So if I wanted to go to this, I could say available in the group, and there's just a list, but it's not showing me all of the ones in that group right now with the edit button. I've got to kind of go back up to that group to see all of them. That's not very cool. But I can toggle this as a deck. It recognizes that this is a group of just cards and they're all the same size, and therefore they are a deck, and I can make them all in random order if I wanted to.
Are there certain features or defaults that are attributable to groups that would make you want to put things in a group versus not? Like, do they stack automatically, or?
Yeah. So I mean, that's less about them being in a group and more about them being the same size and the same size, right? So I can take those things that are in a group, and I know that they're all the same size, so they're all the same card type, and they will stack, but they're not going to stack into a deck with something else, right? So if I have, so let me actually go back to the playground because that is a good question. Play. So I have this game was made with the idea that Hold on. Loading. There we go. So these cards are indeed the same size. They're both kind of tarot card shaped. But you'll notice, so normally how you stack something is you just kind of hover over it and it kind of turns orange like that. Then you know it's going to snap to the deck. I can select the whole deck by clicking twice basically. But this tarot shaped object is not going to do it because that's not part of the same group. Okay. So yeah, so it knows that those assets are all part of the group. So yes, it is handy to do it that way. These are kind of poker card size, but not going to happen. Okay.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. Now these tokens though, I did not make these as a stackable thing, right? And that is something that you can turn on or off, right? So you can make things stackable or not stackable at the kind of group or even individually object level. So close that.
Thanks.
All the editing, you can only have one person really doing it at a time. It's whoever's logged in. There's no accounts that you can have to share it, really. So it's just you who's going to be coming in on this. At least that's how I've experienced it. I don't think I can credits to people, but yeah, there's no way that I know to make it so that other people are going to edit this at the same time. And I wouldn't recommend, as I said, even editing the site or editing it while you're playing it because the updates may break. So let me show you just a couple of features here, and then I'll show you what really the setup part looks, because this is all just the object creation. Yeah. So here's a board, for instance, and you'll notice that I have a layer here called a magnetic map. So when I created this was just a board, and so it's got one side. I upload the image, but something you can do with many of them, you might have seen this was on the cards as well, is I can make a magnetic map, which is done just in Paint, basically, or Photoshop. You can use the different colors, green, blue, or red, to indicate what kinds of objects you're going to be dropping on there and what kind of behavior it should have and whether it should flip or not. So for instance, the Kupu deck, which are the kind of these words deck, basically for some of the challenges in the game, this is where it stacks. And so it'll snap to this, but if I drag it over this one, it will allow those cards, but it will flip it so that it's a discard pile, right? Which is quite handy as well. This is all in the tutorial, but it's pretty easy to make because you can just you just use your select tool in Photoshop and just trace it out and do a fill with all green or blue or red, and then upload that as your map. But again, it's always one of those quality of life things and not generally a must-have feature. Now, something that's also quite nice, or necessary, I should say, is that when you're loading these images, there is a limit to the size of the images that you can upload. So for a board, that's 4,000 pixels, which is pretty big. And you're not going to get a lot of text loss when you're zooming in to the highest resolution, but it may not be big enough or maybe too big file size. So I found that as a bit of an issue, but it means also that if you have to resize things, because if you're uploading a file from print to this, you may be having it in a 300 DPI kind of print resolution. You got to remember this is 72. This is a screen resolution. So, but if you do 72, you're not going to be able to read anything really, unless it's a huge image, in which case it's now too big, because it's 4,000, bigger than 4,000. So something you might want to do is just say, okay, I'll take a big one, scale it down so the biggest dimension is 4,000, which is what I ended up doing. And that way you're getting the highest resolution, like text, if you have text on your board. And what you can do when it's in play is you can zoom it in and out, right? And so you can make the object bigger on the board so that it fits things like the cards and the like. And I wouldn't do it here. So let me show you where this works. So when I'm uploading everything, I've kind of jumped around a bit. The cards. So if you got a card in a game where you just got a bunch of stuff, a bunch of cards in a deck, again, you can. Let me just go back to the objects generally. All right, so I'm going to create an object card deck. Right, drag an image for the back, and then if I have a folder, I can just drag that folder of images onto there, and it goes and it uploads them all. And it knows that they're part of it. And that was quite a handy way of going, here's all of my assets that I might have as single PNG files. or a JPEGs or whatever, and just throw them into there. And now I have all of my cards. I don't need to run through a separate tool, which is quite nice. The components that are not. So this was one, this was actually an image file that we made into a kind of a token. And the front and back, it's not actually tilted like that. This, to be fair, we just took this right off of the Game Crafters website for the image they showed for the boat, but you wouldn't necessarily want to do it that way. You'd want to get a token. I have a different one that we did a nice illustration of a front and a back, and then you can give it depth. When you have the front and the back, and you can give that depth, and then that depth that you have can be colored anything you like here, but it's a solid color. So think of it like being cut from acrylic or wood or colored wood or something, and then you're screen printing it. So again, the physical analogy works pretty well. Again, you're just changing what kind of thing it is. Complex collider. You don't need one, but basically just if you have a PNG that has transparency, it'll recognize the edges, and then that's going to be the shape of your token. So if you just have whatever custom shape you want, you throw it in, you say what kind of token it's going to be, whether it's one that's standing on its edge, vertical, or one that's generally flat, that's horizontal, or if it's a standee. Right? And they give you these little feed information when you need it, which is quite nice. There we go. So, and some custom sounds, but again, premium. But I wouldn't worry about that. How many games have custom sounds? Need custom sounds. Dice, again, what you'll see is that you have an image. Yep. And then I can show here the texture. This dice were a bit strange in terms of the language that we were using for it. So you have to you can download a sample and it shows the layout, and then you just show the faces on it. This image is simply, as this is preview, is only used during the setup onto the table. It's not actually ever seen in the game. Right? So this is what the actual dice will look like. So, and they have a bunch of, so something that's quite nice in terms of if you've got a game with a lot of generic components is they just have it there already. And you can just grab these components and throw them into your game. Different types of game services and tables and tokens of all kinds that people have made already for smileys or what have you. These are publicly available and featured, as it says. But if you have them in yours, let me now go to the actual setup of this game. So once you have all of these items in a box, we want to set them up onto the table. Now, as I said, you can have 2 setups for the free account. And so I'm just going to make a setup here, just so I don't mess with that one. Actually, let me go back and do this a different way. I'm going to take this one and duplicate it. Reach my blends limit. Of course. Interesting. I thought you could have 2 setups. I'm going to create a setup. I don't have permission. I broke it.
Oh no.
Did I break it? I'm logged in. Oh, because I just hit the back button like a numpty. All right. So and it had created it already. So let me delete that. Be very careful when doing this, by the way. Always make a backup. I recommend only having one setup for your game if you're doing this, and then making the other setup being a backup copy, because it's too easy to accidentally go click, click, I just deleted all of my setup, and then you've got to restart it from scratch. I did that shortly before a public presentation of a game, and and two paid clients, and that was a lot of fun.
Oh god.
Rapidly, and unfortunately, I was able to rapidly recreate it because it actually was so easy to set things up on it. So I was able to make it within 30 minutes. I was able to go and throw everything back onto the table. So, so the setup of the actual game, I recommend following this little workflow here, which says, hey, make a bunch of stuff when you have your game, right? You're saying you have a game and you want to make a table setup. It's reminding you here that a game is actually just a bunch of objects. So you may want to make all the objects first. So create all of the objects, set them up on the table, and then publish. So what I'm going to be doing right now is setting up edit to setup. Two buttons for that on the same page. Here we are. This might take a bit more to load.
What's it? Is it pulling all the
yeah, because I made a new
image groups and all that stuff?
Yeah. because this is the first time I've loaded this setup. So it's essentially loading it into a different cache than the other one, I assume. All right, here we are. So I can control the number of seats that I have. So right click is generally gives you the little radial dial of stuff you can do. And it's a bit different in setup. So when I'm playing a game, I can do things like flip it or rotate it or roll it or whatever from the right menu, the right radial menu. And it's not a giant list, which is helpful. Actually, I like this interface a lot more, the radial menu, than I do a giant list. But here, while I'm doing setup, I can do things that are quite important, like scaling, right? Because as I mentioned, one of the best ways to get all the text to work well and not get too fuzzy is to use the biggest possible image you can, highest resolution you can, and just shrink it down to the 4,000 pixels, and then just size it until your cards fit, right? So I've locked these, but I'm going to unlock this board. Actually, let me make a new one. I'm going to lock that board. So to put things on the table, this little browser down here is just going through all of the objects that I have available. Any objects that you've put into your box, you're going to look for the game objects in your box, right? And you say, that's this game. I could put other games objects here if I wanted to, but what would be the point? There's that preview of the die. I want to just place a die right there, and then I'm going to make it huge. Oh, I can set the starting thing. That's nice, but I'm going to make it huge. Let's make it bigger. Let's make it bigger. Let's make it bigger. Right. So you can see what I can do stuff with it, right? I can roll it here if I want to, but I can also lock it. If I want something aesthetic and I want a bunch of just bits and bobs off onto the side of the table for ambience or whatever, that's quite good. Something you can do to create informational guides on the table instead of treating it like a real tabletop. I can make a transparent PNG with just text and things for labels about where people sit or whatever, playmats kind of, and put those onto the table's surface themselves as boards that are just transparent. I'm going to lock that, move it out of the way. So, and this is where I can just duplicate them if I just have many of the same kind of a thing. Or if I have, for instance, a whole group like these Kupu cards, if I drag that, this is going to make a mess. Random exceeded random elements number of the group. Sorry, that was my fault. Random back. Oh, I messed with that, didn't I? Random back. So that's me. So this is a game that's showing a random back. I'm going to delete all of that. I'm not going to get into all the details, but I wanted to make these cards. There, it throws them onto the front. This is just information that'll show up in the setup. This is not going to say random front when you're actually playing the game. And in fact, that's a setting that I need to adjust. But I can shift select to grab a bunch of objects to move them for the setup, duplicate a bunch of those cards. But really what I want to do is delete them. Now you got to be careful though, so you don't delete stuff that you're also selecting. So that this part gets a bit annoying, honestly, because it is a 3D environment. So I'm like going, okay, let me select everything and delete it. Yes, delete 17 things. I can't just click this twice because it brings up the object. So I can't select all of a single type of kind, at least that I don't know of. I may be wrong. All right. But again, let me ignore those. Just placing things is fairly easy. Just drag it where you want it to be and spin it and grow it or shrink it and then lock it into place. So you're making a setup. Nothing too complicated about that. Something that's nice and probably familiar for those who use Tabletop Simulator is I can have bags, right? And so bags are just containers that can hold anything. And I've just put a bunch of these tokens in there, right? So that's all it holds, right? And I can, when you're playing the game, you can always take more than one. This is good if you have things like counters. So a lot of the games they'll use these kind of the fact that we have a digital board and you can have little counters instead that you tick up or down instead of having tokens for everything, because it gets more difficult to manipulate a lot of these physical objects. So part of the featured objects that they have, accessories, even I can filter it, counters, I can make a counter. Let me just drag a random one on there. You can make the custom art, of course, but basically it's just this. It's just a counter, and I can not scale this, mind you, but there it is. So, and this tabletop I can make bigger. I can make this smaller. I hesitate to tell you to make them too big or small, because then you've got problems where you're moving around the table a lot. But as it's a 3D thing, yes, I can use WASD or my arrow keys to move around, but I can also set camera views, initial camera view. Boom, I've set this as the initial camera view. You can also, as a player, you can establish the number keys as cameras, but that's not something that I want playtesters to come in and have to worry about, right? So set up a good initial table view, and then so that you can see everything, kind of an establishing shot, and then make everything as as tight as you can, like it was a real physical tabletop. You should concern yourself with, do I have a tableau of cards that are way over here that players need to keep scrolling over and then clicking on every one and carefully reading text? It's a poor experience on in physical life, and it's probably a poor experience here as well. Yeah, so yeah, other than dragging everything around, this is not, the settings here actually doesn't do anything anymore. They've moved that. So let me exit. So in terms of like the overall game settings, what it can do, yeah, I'm in my setup. I want to go into the setup that I am working on right now, and settings. So some of the stuff about like how do I turn on stackability or things like this is all very menu driven. So it's not incredibly intuitive. You got to know kind of where to find it. Settings, it's a cooperative game. Yep. I have enabled hands, which, while I didn't show, works pretty similar to as you might think it does, which is going to be to just drag it to the bottom of the screen and it will put it into your hand. And then you can only see it. You can set up areas that are visible for you on the space. So for instance, actually I can't do it right now because I'm not playing the game. Silly me. Yeah, exit. So if I was going to click in here, grab that link. Play new room. You can skip the lobby as well. There is a thing to ignore it and just jump right into the play. Or set up a test where it's not even a lobby at all. It's just like you're running a live test and they don't even have to log in with a guest. It just pops them into a chair. So it has been good for testing in that way, sharing with playtesters. So yeah, so when I'm in here, there's the setting camera views, as I mentioned before, but I can drag these things and I should be able to put them into a hand, except that I think I actually turned hands off on this setup. Yeah, I did. Okay, so I don't have any. Again, should have prepared this pie earlier. Right. Close the room, back to the workshop. Right, so if I go to setup 2, publish it, it's great. Right. There's a delay to these things as well because it does this all on their server, which is why they're limiting how much you can do this with, but I'll preview it later. So while that's doing it, let me open the game page and go to the other setup and show you the settings again. Objects usage. So this is where you can change the behaviors of various objects. So if I wanted to change all of these, you'll notice I can do it individually with a little gear icon. And when it comes to cards, I can choose whether I want them to do stuff. Sticky. This is the one that makes them kind of stick together edges. And then whether I can put them into decks, take them out of decks, shuffle said decks, or whether if I click it, it'll automatically deal cards to people. So I can enforce light rules enforcement for things like draw, and then it'll draw 3 cards, draw up to 3 so that you have a hand and it'll drawing is directly into your hand. The downside with this is that it's unlike screentop, it's telling you how to play the game. So it's saying a hand, drag it to the bottom of the screen. Hands exist or they don't, right? I can't set up areas or containers to be a hand invisible in the same way that I can in screentop. So it's saying hands work like this, and it's this thing that's close to you, and you can drag them into it, or you can draw into it, and then do rule enforcement as a result, where I draw up to 5. So I can just hit the button and it'll draw. So I have 5 cards in my hand. And then where can I place these? In a deck, into my hand, which I have turned off, as you can see. So I cannot put those into my hand, which is funny then that I even have a hand. Turn that off. Right, so the yeah, so that's that. Randomize the rotation. I'm sure there's a reason for it, but I can select all of these and hit change behavior, and it's doing the same thing. It's like if I just hit the gear button on all of them, and then you can go to the help. The help mostly useful for setting up things. I say mostly useful in that it's more useful for finding where you can do things. You're going to get is a lot of the help you're going to get from like these things as well, these little question marks at the time, because a lot of it's not explaining it in detail in the help, but it's enough to figure out how it works. Yeah, so that's I think all I want to show about the platform itself. So again, the reasons that I would recommend it for some is if you have it's going to be the 3D game, so something you want a lot of table presence with, and you want to be able to access it through the browser, and you want to be able to just invite random people, or you intend to just distribute it completely for free online. You can use this through Tabletopia because there's no barrier for players. They can just find your link and you're on your website with the embed, click it, play it. You'll even notice some Kickstarter campaigns that use links to Tabletopia that'll then just open up in a new browser window and boop, there they go. They can test it. And you can make a setup that is specifically geared towards that Kickstarter or towards demoing a particular portion of the game. Well, you don't have multiple surfaces like you do in screentop to set up kind of a splash page with instructions and things. What you can do is make a giant object with text on it that you can then place on top and then have them move it out of the way ahead of time. It's not as effective, I would say, as it is in screentop, where it's 2D because it's a giant board or a card that you've got to actually throw out of the way, but it is something you can do. The other reasons I would choose it is, again, if you have people who want to not download stuff or can't download stuff, so the instant access is nice. The limitations are of course that it's limiting to the size of the objects you can have, limiting to the file size of objects you can upload. It's limiting in the number of setups you can have. So if you want to be able to make a lot of games, you're going to need a different account for all of these, for each game you're going to make. And there's no way of extracting it here. So once it's in Tabletopia, like screentop, it's just there. I can't download it. I can clone it. I can make another copy of it, but it's still in their proprietary platform. That bothers me a little bit in that, and that's actually why I chose Tabletopia, because of all the platforms that do that. In the very least, I can go from print to Tabletopia pretty quickly without having to go through a lot of intermediary steps. In fact, all the files for this one and for the other one I did are the full bleed images that you would then send to the printer. So these ones aren't even shaped right for the cards. They're a little bit bigger than they would be. And that was quite helpful because it meant that I could just set it up as if I was making a physical prototype or a physical game for print, and then just upload it to Tabletopia. And I still have the print files ready to go. I'm not actually making anything for Tabletopia, so I don't feel like I'm losing anything if this disappears. It's pretty easy for me to upload it all again, and then just arrange it on the table, because of course I can just drag them all at once and it goes. It makes all my cards. So I would say it's useful for people who want to who have a physical game but don't want to have to lose or don't want to set it up and be tied to a system, and that's quite handy by making lots of things in it. Downside is I can't distribute a file to let people else do it, but my link is always there. So it's basically like I make this account and I've made the game in it, and then it's forget about it. It's there, right? And I'll never really have to access it again except to share the link or playtest it if I want to. With that, I'm gonna actually show a sneaky third one, which is called Virtual Tabletop. Virtual Tabletop. A lot of people might have heard of playingcards.io. Which is a very 2D, very basic, like throw things around on a table and see other people's curses. It's super basic and super awesome, actually, for really rapidly prototyping things, or like a whiteboard almost, but with cards and stuff. virtualtabletop.io is also like that. It's got a very playing cards.io feel to it, and it's open source, and you can download your files and just move them, right? So you can always have an archive of your stuff that you've set up. Also, the community is making versions of stuff as well. So for instance, when you make it up, when you just go to virtualtabletop.io, it opens up a new instance basically. And here I've made this one. Here's pandemic, generic pandemic, right? That somebody has made. And it's not as easy, it doesn't look awesome, right? When I zoom in and out, it's because if I use my browser, it doesn't work well. I have to actually zoom in with like pinching on my trackpad, right? So the scroll wheel zoom will do this, but it's a little limited in the amount of space that I've got. You can't have cards. This game decided, we're going to eschew that, and the cards are actually these little wedges here. So this one is not a great example of what it looks like. But I'm playing Pandemic. I can drag these around. Oh, I've got a stack of them. And again, this game, you can let me show you another one instead. So here's my games that I currently have. I'm not logged in or anything, so this is just a public library. Let me check it out. I'm going to here's Azul, or like Azul. That's the Board Game Geek link, yes, but I can edit. Now I have Azul, generic Azul. Play. Right. So complicated setups. Here's a 3-player game of Azul, right? And I haven't looked through the interactivity on this one, so I'm not sure what I would actually need to do. So it take a bit of clicking around. There I go, just drag. So I'm going to be dragging a few of these things. I bet that, nope, maybe not. 2-player. There we go. A button that automates things. 2-player setup. There it is. Except that it's already got extra ones because I dragged them myself. So, but you get the idea. Like I can set it up, and then I can just play the game. It's not going to be doing rules enforcement for me, but I got tickers and stuff. And if I wanted to look at the basic one, you can do. If I just wanted to make a room, so uploading files, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like I can archive it. I have a file, and then I can throw it back in there. Edit mode. It's just a blank tabletop. And I can add things like a set of cards. This is very much how playingcards.io works as well, but this is a bit more fiddly, but it's very extensible to use and make things. So I recommend grabbing a template, something else, and doing it. But if playingcards.io is what you want to look at, here's some games. Let me just throw in a game of Trial by Trolley. Yes, I am over 18. Trial by Trolley. Enter. So as you can see, very similar look. Yeah. Just throwing things around for those other people. And basically I have these tokens, and this is a deck. I can reset things. These are just tokens, cards, right? And I can have a hand down at the bottom, but basically it's cards. Yeah, is how I'm going to get stuff. Rotate around. But very, very simple. It's not not something I'd use for demoing unless you have very limited table space and you just want cards or a simple board or abstracts and things like that. Because again, look at this, these spaces here, they've made it where it's quite not cool to look at. Those are the spaces where it drags to automatically. You don't need those. You can just have it open. So yeah, it's mileage may vary. This is the simplest. It's free. This room is persistent for a little while. And you can save your files from here as well on playingcards.io, but it's not open source like Virtual Tabletop is. Yeah, so that's my little bonus one that I wanted to share. So I'm going to stop my screen share now. Kirsten, did you have any questions about Tabletopia since you were the kind of Ariadne in this experience for that one?
No, I still feel like I get lost in the how it's structured and where I would go, where I would start, and how to get through to the end. I don't know why. It just doesn't. My brain doesn't seem to retain how those things are connected very well. And I don't know. Yeah, the linear. I know you said you don't like the lists, and I really like that I can go, okay, all of my assets are here, and then any features of those assets.
That part I like. The lists I don't like. I remember mentioning I don't like the list when I'm right clicking and it brings up a list of actions I can do to an object on screen. I like the radial menu. I don't think Tabletopia's interface is great on the web for organizing information, right? It's like I completely agree. It took a while to figure out where do I go to do the thing. And the fact that you can have two buttons on the same screen that basically do the same thing, also a bit confusing sometimes. So yeah, completely understand on that. But again, that's why I want to work with the analogy of go to objects, make a bunch of objects, that's all your stuff, and then make a game, and then just throw those objects into the game box, right? Or in the reverse, just make a game box and throw the objects in it, and work from that. And then you're making a setup, which is arranging them on the table. But again, where you find those buttons, and if you're just going to the web page to try it, it's not easy. And it should not as easy as it should be to do. So that's
I was going to mention, you mentioned live updates. Screentop doesn't do the live updates either. There is something called I don't know how it works yet. There's something called, oh shoot, I'm now I just blanked on it. Revisions, I think. Revisions. Oh, it's an R. There's two of the roles that you can do. There's either tester or player. Player just allows somebody to always play the most current version of the game. The tester can choose to play any of the current variants you have available, and I don't know how to create those yet. So it seems like you can have various versions as you're testing, that the tester can access all of them and give you feedback on the different versions of your current
that makes sense.
thing.
Yeah,
I haven't figured out how to do that yet.
The equivalent in Tabletopia, I would guess, it would be the different setups, right? Like I've made a setup that was the like a beta, like a live one that was our currently functioning, and then I have one that I mess with, and then when I was done, I would just duplicate it and replace the live one with that. But and then I could just share the link to the play space for the demo one, the one that's in development, I should say, the dev site to play testers. But again, if I'm using Tabletopia, I'm probably not using it as much for heavy development where I want to do things live. I'm probably running a play test, going away, making my changes, and then coming back to it at best. Or what I did like is that I'm done and I can share it with the world, but with that nice embeddable interface, and then it's amongst a bunch of other games that everybody would know, like the Wingspans and the Cartographers and the Architects. And I think there's a lot of games that are on Tabletopia, so that's good. I think that's it for me, Kirsten, and I need to come on close very soon. So hopefully viewers have found this useful. To kind of give an overview of these two systems, why they might choose them. As a quick summary, Kirsten, in like a minute, why would you say who would choose Screentop, for what reasons?
Someone who wants maximum accessibility, something really easy to use, actually, so you can do quick iteration, quick import of your assets to make the game playable quickly by your testers, something that allows you some flexibility for allowing other people to either get to the design level or the playtest level easily, that can access it on their own if you want them to go and come back. So and anyone who's wanting to pitch it and have different game states really accessible to smoothly transition from throughout your pitch to show different various game states.
That last one, I think, is the biggest variance between Tabletopia and Screentop right there. And so I'd say all of the above for Tabletopia, except having the different variants in the different surfaces, which is not something you can do Tabletopia. For Tabletopia, I'd say it's really great for end product if you want to make it a version of it and just be done and share it, and you don't plan on doing a lot of development in Tabletopia. I found it useful as a process for me to put a demo in there right from my physical prototype components. So I found Tabletopia to be useful for me, as I said, to just say, I have all these assets. I don't want to have to make into a secondary layer of laying them out in a grid. So it's useful for me to go from physical to digital quite quickly with Tabletopia. And I know, again, that's what they're all going to say, make it quick. But in this case, the idea of just taking the individual cards in a folder, throwing them in there, and it all recognizes them and does the deck for me has been a boon, because it means I can just edit one file, update that file, and I'm done for individual cards pretty quickly. And then my ownership of the files are all obviously I own them all, but the everything is formatted for the physical printing, and I never have to do anything else with it and I can just use that and just put them in Tabletopia. And I think that was a strength for Tabletopia
And
as
if
well.
you make an update to your cards or something, do you just repopulate the group of objects?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then it
it'll
carries over
automatically
to the
setups. Yeah, so well, not automatically. So if I update the object, I then go to the game page, and in the objects, it'll say, "Oh, you've got 15 updates." You just go click, and it'll go, and it'll update all the setups with the new images. So
Yeah.
I don't have to go into the setup and do it that way. I can just do it from the game page. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I have that interim step. It doesn't take me very long to do the drag and drop them into a little grid and then pop that that same thing. You just upload the new image and it's automatically, there's nothing else I need to do. Once I update the asset, that's what it's pulling from for every subsequent play of the game. So yeah, that's my one interim step, and thankfully it doesn't take me very long, and it takes me longer to figure out where to go in Tabletopia so far because I haven't learned it.
Again, yeah, fair call. Fair call. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think, and it doesn't look as pretty in terms of the 3D. So yeah.
Yes, it's true. I had to wow some people a little bit. They wanted that bit of a little flash to it to make it 3D. So that was a reason we went with Tabletopia on that.
Yep,
that project.
totally understand that. Yeah.
Anyway, we've got to close this off. Thank you very much for your time, Kirsten,
Thank you.
and hopefully this is good. I'll send you the video.
Sounds good. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.